Welcome to Create, Don't Scrape, Glaze Protection against AI. I'm your moderator, Mia Araujo, and I'm sure many of you are also here because you're just as concerned as I am about generative AI, about things like Midjourney, DALL-E, and Stable Diffusion. You don't feel safe maybe about posting your work online. So I'm hoping after this panel you'll feel a little bit better about that. I'm honored to present these four panelists to you today. They've each put an incredible amount of work over the past year to shift the conversation, spread awareness about AI, advocating on behalf of not only artists, but other industries that are gonna be affected by these technologies. So I'm gonna let you all introduce yourselves and we'll get started.
Hello, I'm Jon Lam, perpetual shit poster on Twitter. Basically, this whole thing started for me when Lensa came out, and I was seeing how generative AI was affecting Karla, Greg, Sam Yang, and Greg Rutkowski. And, you know, when Kim Jong-il passed away, I think that hit everybody extremely hard. He was our art ambassador. And a week later, you see some tech bro, feeding all this stuff into some AI bullshit, and then it pumps out all these bastardizations of his stuff. We were suffering in silence, and everybody who's not in the art industry kind of looks at us like art comes out of the ether. We're not people. We don't have lives. We don't have rent or mortgages or kids to feed. So I made a tweet where I decided to humanize people that were suffering. Karla was on that tweet as well. And overnight, I think I got like 60,000 retweets, which blew my mind. But it also told me that people care. They just need to understand that there's people behind suffering. So after that, I realized that there was a bit of momentum going, so I decided to keep shit posting, create the hashtag Create Don't Scrape with my wife, Jen. And I want to create a safe place for artists to keep posting their art. And there's a website, createDon'tScrape.com, where I've created like a compendium of articles regarding the Stable Diffusion litigation and other facts that have come out about generative AI and how artists are being affected.
Hi, I'm Ben Zhao. I'm a professor of computer science at University of Chicago. A year ago, I don't think I knew much about art of anything at all, and I was reasonably clueless about all the things that were going on. I do my research in security, and for the better part of the last decade, I've been building systems to protect AI, but the good kind of AI, the discriminative classifiers that detect cancer and those kind of things. And then I think, 2017 was the first time I wrote a paper that was talking about the misuses of AI. When we showed that Yelp, you could basically write Yelp online reviews. This was, 6 years before generative AI. You could write online Yelp reviews and fool people into thinking they were real. And it just kept coming because it got easier to see all the different misuses. 2020, we did a paper called Fox that showed how you could maybe protect your faces and your selfies from unauthorized facial recognition. Voice synthesis, all sorts of things, but I think still clueless about AI until last November when my student and I jumped on a CAA town hall that Karla was hosting along with CAA, and that blew my mind. And from that day on, basically Glaze was born, and we've been working on it and iterations since then. So yeah, we'll talk about those kind of things and Nightshade and stuff. So, woo.
Hi everyone, I'm Steven Zapata. So I've been a designer and illustrator for a while. Nowadays I focus a lot on education and teaching. I have a YouTube channel, and my priority has always been focusing on how fun it can be to actually make your work moment to moment. I sort of use that to help people get through the difficulties of navigating their career and making their decisions. So when my students started really stressing out when they saw DALL-E and Stable Diffusion show up, I started getting really interested in how the AIs worked. I started doing some research. I discovered some of the stuff that Karla was posting. And that all culminated in a video that I put on my YouTube channel called The End of Art, an Argument Against Image AIs. That was sort of me putting my, I don't know how else to put it, my anger just out there on the internet, which is not usually the tone of my channel. And that sort of pulled me then into a year of advocacy. Basically, it was about a year ago that I posted that. And since then, I've had the good fortune to do a lot of advocacy with Concept Art Association and to sort of help push the ball along in trying to defend artists and their rights and get protections for them. So thanks, everyone, for being here.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm really excited to be here. I'm surprised. I know that Ben is like a university professor, and he's just like, Psh, it's 10 a.m. That's no thing. But I'm really grateful to be here with all of you today, and I'm really excited about this panel. My name is Karla Ortiz. I am a fine artist, concept artist, and an illustrator. I've been working in the film industry for about 10 years or so. In the industry per se, about 14, 15. I worked on all sorts of projects, Marvel, the Loki one, the latest Loki, to Guardians of the Galaxy 3, most notably known for my work on Doctor Strange, as I designed his costume, worked on Magic the Gathering and all that. But one of the things that I love most about what I do is also coming to events like these, doing workshops, connecting with students, connecting with people who are passionate about our craft. And I've always been very protective of that. I've always been very wanting to improve the conditions in our industry. And so when I saw the advent of generative AI and researching and reaching out to, professionals and experts like Professor Zhao here, I go Zhao. And I'm so sorry, it's my Spanish. I started to learn that what was being sold to us wasn't accurate, and these models, in order for them to work, required basically a lot of us, if not all of us. And I found it to be so wrong that I became one of the first plaintiffs in a class action suit against companies like Stable Diffusion, DeviantArt, and Midjourney because of it. I've also become now part-time, because it can't be my full-time. I like to paint as my full-time, and I want to keep it that way. But in my part-time capacity, I do wish, I am an advocate. I work alongside, Professor Zhao. Or at least wherever I can, I try to help people out. I try to work a lot with the Concept Art Association, does great work. And yeah, I'm sure we can talk about the history of things and all that. Or
You've also testified in front of Congress.
I did that, yes.
Kind of important.
Mia, I think that was such a surreal moment. I kind of blocked it out.
We have not.
Yeah, that was. I'm happy to talk about that. That was life. Something that I've come to learn through all of this is that life takes you to all very weird, unexpected places. Especially if you put yourself out there, you'll meet very wonderful people who are all very passionate about improving things. The future, as has been said in past, workshops and panels of ours, the future isn't set in stone, and it's all of us connected. We're going to change that. We're going to shift that, and I don't know what that has to do with anything about me talking in Senate, but no, it basically. I was there because of the Concept Art Association. I was there because of the advocacy from some of the members inside the Concept Art Association within DC. And yeah, one thing led to another, and there I was talking to the Senate. Ben, you should have been there with me too. But yeah, hi, nice to meet you all. I'm excited about this chat. Thank you.
All right. Well, just to do a quick primer, sort of recap, Stephen, why don't you explain to anyone who maybe isn't totally clear on what is AI, how do these generative AI generators work, all that stuff, and
sure. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about this. The artist is going to talk about this because we're going to keep it very simple and sort of layman's level. So in the most practical sense, let's talk about how a user uses it. So you interact with these models either locally on your computer or over a web interface. You can use some of them through Discord, ChatGPT, something like that. They can be integrated into a lot of things. And what you actually do is you use a natural language prompt. So you just write the way you're used to writing. You input a prompt like astronaut drinking lemonade, and then the AI model will generate images that match that prompt as closely as possible, and it usually gives you more than one result. Now, for most users, that's it. That's the base functionality. There are other steps you can do to take and edit the control, but that is how you use the base model. And I'm sure that we'll touch some of those other things that you can do later. But our big concern is how the systems are trained, specifically the practices around collecting the data sets. So the data sets that are used to train the systems, they contain billions of images. They're tremendous data sets, and they're scraped from the internet, and they're anything and they're everything, including the works of thousands and thousands of artists. So these data sets contain two things: links to the images that the model will analyze, and text descriptions of those images. When the models train, this part I wrote because it's a mouthful, they come to a series of statistical and probabilistic conclusions about the patterns in the images and the correlations between them and the text descriptions. So once trained, that series of patterns is locked in. It can't unlearn them, it's not easy to retrain, and sort of that space is what you navigate with your prompts. I'm not going to go into detail about the specific process that is run on the images in this current technological paradigm, diffusion, because interestingly, that doesn't really come up much anymore in these conversations. What seems to be most important is that our images were used at all, and that's most of what people want to talk about. So I'm going to leave it there. That's surface level. It's obviously much more complicated than that in actuality. Our names are used in it too. Our names would be in the text descriptions that are paired with the images. Yeah.
And that's actually a great segue, John. I was going to ask you to sort of talk about how this comes into play in terms of our artist styles. Like, it's our individual voice, right? And if you can elaborate on the problem there.
Well, basically, anytime you see something that looks impressive or looks familiar, it's coming from all your favorite artists. You know, for example, Greg Rutkowski's been scraped, I think, about 400,000 times, and without his art, or without any of the top artists' contribution, we wouldn't have models that are going for like tens of millions of dollars evaluations. You know, some of these companies are, well, some of them have like $1 billion evaluations, right? And that is not being, no artist is being compensated for that. And they need us, you know, without all this art, they would have no product. And that's something that they, you know, completely fail to admit over and over again. And every time we talk about opting out or whatever, you know, it's always incredibly difficult to do that, or to explain it, or to try to make it like have any tech company implement it in a way that's easy. And even though if we did opt out of it, there's nothing preventing us from being re-scraped right after. So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. And Karla, you hear this, we've all heard this question many times, but how is this not like the camera or digital painting tools or any technology that has, you know, sort of intersected with art?
Ah, yes, the favorite talking point of all those AI folks. This is the same thing. We've done it before. This is like 3D, or Photoshop is just another tool. Heard that one in places you wouldn't even expect. You're just like, So, unlike, you know, Photoshop, unlike 3D, unlike the camera, unlike brushes, unlike anything at all, this tool uniquely consumes the creativity, the hard work, and the innovation of others. And not only does it consume it, it can only function via it. And that's, again, that's how it's been explained, that's how the models work. And so, and some people also like to equate it to a Google search, to which I go, no, because at least with the Google search, you end up in my web page, and you can see my works, and you can see my, you know, what I do, you see my contact email, you can call me for work. Versus these models, when you type in my name or you type in the name of an artist, it gives you a mimic of that artist, essentially cutting off the artist from a potential client. So yeah, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. And I find that when folks say that it's just something that they've heard online and used to justify what's going on, whether done so intentionally or unintentionally. But no, it's not like any other tool we've ever seen. Yay!
Can I just add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I love how everybody who chimes in about how this is like any other technology has never created art at all.
Oh, yeah.
And yet all these people are suffering from Dunning-Kruger effect like crazy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys want to chime in? I'm just like really petty, so I'm gonna keep going.
It's not petty, it's accurate. That's accurate.
Well, some people would describe it as petty that we would choose to defend ourselves, right?
Yeah, Dennis Hopper from Speed would complain about marked bills as well. So, I mean, that's a deep cut Speed reference. But anyways, what I'm saying is there are bank robbers out there, and when they steal money and it's marked, they get sprayed in the face with purple paint. And that's what these tech bros are like. They just steal our shit. And then when we defend ourselves with Glaze or Nightshade, they complain about it because they feel like our art belongs to them.
Well, Ben, let's turn this over to you. I want to hear the background of how, like you talked briefly, Karla, about how you two met, but why don't you tell us about yourself, your team, and what Glaze is and how it works?
How much time do you have?
You can take the rest of the panel.
That
if
sounded
you
like a lot. I don't know. Jesus, what kind of question? I mean, so I co-run a lab at University of Chicago where with Heather Zhang, and we advise about, I don't know, somewhere between 7 or 8 ish PhD students, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where to go with that, but I can start with like how we met.
Yeah.
But I think if you could go to the next slide actually.
Oh, do you want to come up here? And
Oh, no, I don't want to.
Oh, sure. No problem.
Just skip through all the animation. Just show so in 2020, in 2019, we had a discussion with our students, and I was like, I think the ubiquity of AI is going to be problems. It's going to cause problems, and I wanted to imagine what bad things can happen so we can prevent them. So one of the things that we imagined was the fact that maybe everyone will build facial recognition models. And so we started working on this project in fall 2019 that was supposed to be about how do you protect yourself against like this overarching dystopian like bad actor or many, many bad actors who are going to take all your selfies and build models of you without you knowing. We did this project, it took us months, and then literally like 3 days before we were about to submit the paper, Kashmir Hill at New York Times wrote the article on Clearview AI. And I was like, okay, so literally we are living in the dystopian world that I was writing an introduction to explain. And that introduction got a lot easier. It just became, hey, look at this New York Times article. We are here now. So Fox was basically designed to disrupt that. And that mask encapsulates a lot of what I get my inspiration from. It's V for Vendetta. That.
Great choice. Great choice.
Right? But so that's what I feel. It's like when bad stuff happens, you build stuff to fix it. But anyway, so what happened after that? If you could, the next slide has the timeline, which was basically this last summer, 2022. One of the artists, Kim Van Doon from the Netherlands, sent us an email. You can just skip through all the animation. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
And in Kim's email, it's on there, and she was very polite, and she was like, "Well, can we use this tool like Fox to protect art?" And at the time, I was like, "I don't know what the heck that means. Like, what do you need protection for?" And so we wrote back this polite but very confused email saying, "Thank you for your email. We don't know what that means, but is it like facial recognition? Probably not." And Kim was like, "Okay." So then I think a few months passed, and then all the press, much more press hit about DALL-E 2 and Midjourney and so on. And then I think it was Sean. Literally, I remember that day, like when we were in the lab, and he looked at me. He's like, "Is this what Kim was emailing about?" And I was like, "Huh." And so we reached back out to Kim, and I think I forget the exact how long it took, but like a few days later, Kim was like, hey, there's this online town hall. You should like come check it out. And Sean and I were like, artists, we don't know what that's about, but sure, let's check it out. And we even showed up late. I think we were on like 15 minutes late, and then we just listened, and it was just like, oh my God, all the things that were going on that we had no idea about, and that's how it all started.
Can I say
Yeah?
about that moment, because that was really funny. So we were hosting the concept art town hall, and that one was really, really a really good one. And it's so funny because we're nearing by Q&A. We're getting close to the end, and I think it was Nicole from Concept Art Association. She was moderating, and behind the scenes, she was sending me a chat. She's like, "There's this professor that wants to talk," and we were like, "This could go either very well or very poorly." And she's like, he's very insistent. I'm like, "Well, just bring him up," and boom, in the screen, here's Ben. And he's asking, like, if we were to develop a tool or something that could help artists, what would it be? You could literally go on YouTube, check out the Concept Art Association Town Hall from November, skip to the end, and you'll see that moment yourself. It's pretty cool. And I remember Greg Rutkowski being like, well, we have to, tackle the root issue and the root cause, and we're like kind of all in agreement with that. And I think I remember, I don't know if it was me or if it was Greg, but one of us said something about, but yeah, like having protective measures, figuring out how to know if this is AI, find ways to protect our work and so on. And Jen's like, all right, cool, thank you. I get an email 2 weeks after from your team saying, hey, Karla, remember us? So we actually want to show you something. And I'm like, all right, cool, let's see what you got. And so I have a meeting with the University of Chicago, and that's when they introduced me to the first concept of Glaze. And I was like, I'm in. What do you need? What do you need right now? Let's do this. And I was in awe, and I felt a glimmer of hope that was indescribable to feel. And then I felt bad because I couldn't share that with the world at all.
That must have been so hard to keep secret.
It was, because people were like...
It was, yeah. That glimmer of hope about Glaze that we knew about behind the scenes kept us afloat for months.
Yeah.
I mean, it got us through so much. It was a big deal.
And I'm seeing people online like, and I'm just like, just hold on.
But I love that from the start, it's a collaboration between artists and the University of Chicago team. So for anyone knowing where did they come from, it's like they really care about our community, like working with us. Because there are other companies that are claiming to do, things on behalf of artists, and there's always reason to be skeptical.
Some of them are here. Some of those companies are here. Let's just say I will not be using Photoshop anymore. Clip Studio, Procreate.
I was going to say something. But it was funny, just to add really quickly on that, on the collaboration aspect, it was super funny because I remember being in one of the interviews, and then it's like, well, we're going to need like artists, to look at our what was it, like a poll or questionnaire, to look at questionnaire. I'm like, no worries, we got that. And then he was like, well, we're going to release something. It's not going to look very good because, and I'm like, no. Hold up. We are visual artists. I'm sure we can find amazing people to help you build this and have at least really good looking UI. Hey. Really good looking UI. There's good AI, by the way. It's generative AI. That's the problem. So let's be clear there. But we're talking about UI anyway. So, but it was like we could have good UI, good ass UI, and we connected you with Linz, who's amazing.
So one of the things in research is that a lot of times people write papers and you do a product, not a product, but like a project, and you put it out there and then you're done and you get a paper and then you walk away and that's the end of it. And then 3 years later you get some random email about, hey, is this thing still alive? You're like, no, sorry, my students graduated, and that's the end of that. That's usually how things go. And with this, they had to be more than that, obviously. And one of the challenges that I thought of the minute we started this was like, this is hard. I mean, even if I had an artistic background, which I of course don't, but even if I had an artistic background, like defining what is style is just this incredibly nebulous and personal thing. And so my first instinct was like, holy crap, we can't do this like in a numerical metric kind of way. We had to do user studies, which are challenging and difficult, and in order to get the right set of audience to actually know what they're talking about. In this particular instance, it's like there's no other choice. You have to get real artists who actually do this for a living to look at these images, and we're like, damn, how are we gonna get like, normally you do user studies, we do like 100, maybe 200 for a good scale. And I was so nervous, I was like, man, I don't know how to get 200 artists in front of this thing to look at this random project. And then Karla was like, no, it's okay, we got it. and I was so nervous because the timing, it was like Christmas, it was after Thanksgiving. The deadline for publication, submitting the publication was like late January or something. And so we're like, we got to get crank on this. We got to write the paper. We got to do all the big user studies because we'll need to iterate and do more fine-grained user studies. And nobody's going to respond to us during Christmas, because it's holidays. But Karla's like, no, it's fine. We got it. and so finally we put the survey together and we sent out a link and, boom, we had like 1,300 artists or something like that respond. And I was like, holy crap. This is bigger than any user study I've ever done, and even in the end, when we like pruned out some of the results, it was like 1,156 artists who took a lot of time to answer and look through all these detailed images. So, yeah, it was unbelievable, and unlike anything I've ever done before. So, and it wouldn't be possible if the artists didn't bother or care. So,
we're a powerful community, BB. Yeah. This might side rail the conversation rather quickly, but it was such a beautiful time because I remember also, like, I made an oil painting for Glaze. I call it Musa Victoriosa because it's basically Spanish for victorious muse. It's basically a but I remember asking Ben, I'm like, Ben, can I get the honor of making the first painting? He's like, yes. And it's out there, and it's the first image to be glazed, and I'm always honored by that. But what I won't forget is the feeling of painting it, because I was processing my emotions of, here's this existential, thing that has occurred for our industry that, keeps me up awake at night sometimes, that I don't know how to process. But making that painting, knowing that it was for a tool that was gonna help me process what had gone on and help me be more hopeful and be more positive and be more excited about our future than I had been for pretty much the entire half of that year. So it was a process of healing, and I don't think I would have had that without you guys. So thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Ben, do you want to continue?
Okay, are we going to talk about how Glaze works?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you can skip past all that. Oh, actually, you can go back to that. That's fine. So how does Glaze work? I mean, you take an image, you run it through Glaze. It makes small changes to it that hopefully are reasonably small, and out comes an image that when someone trains it into a LoRa to try to, encapsulate your style so that they can draw random crap in your style, it should teach the model something different about your style than it actually is, right? So, our canonical example is taking Karla. On every single one of my talks, it's Karla's art, being fed into the thing, this, little diagram, overview diagram, and then out comes other mimicries of Karla, but then if you mimic it, then out comes like lots of Van Gogh-like things. So that's the idea. And why does it work? It's basically just because AI looks through images in different set of classes. Their perceptions are very different, fundamentally so. They cannot be changed. This is not something that you just switch or realign or whatever. This has been something that we've known for decades. I've worked for many years to try to break that so that we can secure them and break adversarial examples. Turns out it's not a thing. It doesn't happen. So it is fundamental, and using that misalignment of human vision versus AI means that we can do things where we can make changes that greatly disturb what AI sees, but not what you and I see. And that's the key insight behind all this, behind Glaze, behind Nightshade, all this stuff. And that's why, like, you know, doing things like pixel smoothing and stuff like that doesn't really do anything, because that's like saying, you know, if you can see magically a pattern in the UV spectrum on a particular image, and they say, well, I'm going to resample that image, are you going to see anything different? No, you'll still see the same thing, just slightly downsampled, because it's in the UV range, and that range is not resistant, or is resistant to you dropping random pixels. So that's what it's like. And so that's why, like, if you take screenshots, if you crop it, if you transform it, if you compress it, if you whatever, you know, turn up the brightness. I mean, unless you do something specifically to target the AI dimension that the models see their things through, you're not going to actually affect it, right? So that's the reason why stuff like pixel smoothers and whatnot don't work.
It's not a simple watermark, basically.
No, it's not. It's nothing like a watermark. And as far as I know, there was nothing before it. There's lots of things after it now. I've seen a number of these projects pop up after, which is great. We want as many of these as possible. Yeah.
Do we have a slide showing the effects of Glaze?
The what guy?
Do we have a slide that shows the visuals of Glaze?
I think I don't have a lot of slides. I didn't think we were going to do lots of slides.
Try to cut it down.
Well, there's a few things to put some fine points on there, which is there's a lot of mis and disinformation out there online saying just patently untrue things like, oh, I can run a denoise on a glazed image, I can do a Gaussian blur on it, that'll get rid of it. Anytime you read something like that, that person has no idea what they are talking about. They are probably an anonymous account somewhere on the internet. Glaze works. Glaze works. Yeah.
And Ben, can you talk, actually, can you talk a little bit how it changes the future training, like how it affects future training?
So Glaze doesn't change future training too much in the base models, right? So Glaze is designed specifically to prevent LoRa's. So these are, you know, fine-tuned, lightweight models that someone can take Stable Diffusion and take, you know, 10 pieces of your art or something and build a mimicry of it. And if you go on some of these really gross websites, you'll see like people uploading these little LoRa's and saying, oh, look, you can, you know, draw like Samyang or whoever. And this LoRa allows you to do that. So Glaze disrupts that, but it doesn't attack the base model process. That's what Nightshade is for. But I don't know if we want to go there right now.
I think we do want to go there, yeah.
We absolutely do.
I want to jump in real quick. When it comes to Nightshade, I have to give this disclaimer. I am a part of active litigation, and I'm not able to comment, so please just watch my expressions as they talk. Thank you.
I can say things. Nightshade rocks. Let's hear about Nightshade.
Okay, so I can explain a little bit about Nightshade. So first of all, the paper is still under review, so I had to sort of walk a fine line to not de-anonymize the review process, because academic review processes are always double blind. I don't know who the reviewers are. They shouldn't know who wrote the paper. So in the paper that is submitted and under review, it's called by a different name. So it's not called Nightshade. So for minimum anonymity purposes, and obviously none of our names and whatever is on it, but that doesn't mean that I can't talk about Nightshade in public. And this is what we did with Glaze as well. We had the New York Times article, you know, while the paper was under review, because I checked with the program chairs and I said, look, you know, I don't want to wait 3 months to let people know that there's help coming on the way, so can we talk about it? They're like, okay, as long as the paper itself has no traces of identifiable information. So Nightshade is a paper under review. We submitted it, was it like last week or something, 17th. And there were reporters who were already interested. I asked them to basically hold off until the public version of the paper was available. So I think the MIT TR article came out on Monday of this past week. So okay, what does Nightshade do? Nightshade basically does what Glaze cannot. It is not a protective tool. It is an attack. That's all it is. It's a poison attack, and so is Glaze really, but Glaze is a poison attack on the mimicry process. Nightshade is an attack on base model training. That means every time that DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and Imagine or whoever every time they rebuild and retrain their model, they up the version number or build a new model, they need massive amounts of training data. And that involves just hundreds of millions of text labels and images that go in, and it teaches the model how to think about these concepts and so on. So what Nightshade does is we found a way to optimize the process where you can take a very small number of samples that are just patently incorrect. So you can see, oh, that's the image, okay. I forgot what I put into these slides. But you can basically give it a picture of a dog, but you can change the inside of it in the feature space so that it will teach the image how to output a cat. But it still has the label of a dog, and it still looks like a dog to human eyes. And so you give this image, and so apply this to your own art, right? So if your art is, let's say you're drawing a really cute puppy, and it's still labeled as a puppy, and we do what almost looks like glaze to it. So inside it looks like a cat, but outside to you and everybody else it looks like a dog and is labeled as such. And you upload it online to do whatever. And if these companies disregard opt-out, they disregard, do not scrape, and they take your art and they train it without your permission, then they get taught a small poison pill that teaches their model how to output a cat whenever they see dog.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So this poison process is known. Poison attacks have been around for a while. I did not coin the term. People hear it, they're like, oh, poison. Well, it's the technical term for manipulating training data. That's what it's called. But what is different about Nightshade is that no one thought you could do this to generative models that have hundreds of millions of training data sets. Turns out the key is that the amount of training data per prompt space is actually quite small. The number of images actually labeled with dragon is only like 20,000. And that's a much more manageable number. And it turns out that if you do smart things with machine learning on these images, you can have a strong effect, much more so than benign images. And so the numbers up here are actually, oh, can you animate through the rest of that slide? Just keep going. Keep going. There you go. So those are the real numbers. The numbers that were on the TR article were taken from the paper. That figure comes from the base dumb version of our attack. It's not even, it's like brain dead. So the optimized version, you can see with the numbers crossed out, is about 1/4 and sometimes 1/5 or 1/6 of the base dumb attack, which means that on Stable Diffusion XL, this is the newest version of Stable Diffusion, if you get 50 samples of a dog poisoned as a cat, you can make it output cat. It's a little hard.
I think we can manage 50, probably, right? I think we could. I think we can manage that.
Okay, there are caveats. Okay, so the experiments that we did with Stable Diffusion are through the fine-tuning process because we can't, with our GPUs, fully train Stable Diffusion from scratch. But we have fully trained from scratch other models that were smaller, and those take a little bit more samples. So imagine adding another factor 2 on top of that. Then you're talking about pretty safe numbers. So maybe 100, maybe 200 before you get really good poison results. But these are still really reasonable numbers concerning the number of artists who are at LightBox or around the world, and we've got a considerable more number of users who are actively glazing things. So I think it's manageable.
Excellent.
Could you talk really quick about web glaze and sort of the accessibility of glaze, because that will sort of be the portal for anybody who might be interested in contributing to the fight back against AI models. That is sort of be how they do it.
Yeah. So I think early on, as an academic, we're like, oh, we're going to do this tool, and we'll do whatever we need to make this tool work. And so we designed the first system just for GPUs. And it only took us a few months. It only took me a few months of interacting with lots and lots of artists before I realized, oh, wow, maybe artists don't all sit at home with powerful desktops and massive GPUs waiting to crunch these things. And I resisted it for a long time because this idea of a web service, I was trying to get trust, and the idea of an offline app that you can run yourself is the foolproof way to do that, right? You turn off the damn network, like you can't send me anything. There's no training on your art because you don't need the network. The web service requires a little bit more trust. You're sending us your images, and so you have to be able to trust us that we're not going to store it somewhere or train crap on it or whatever. So it took us a while to sort of build WebGlaze. But yeah, so WebGlaze now I think has 2,400 users who crunch stuff through it pretty regularly. As the user count grows, we will continue to add more GPUs as necessary to keep it running, at a good speed. And the first thing that we'll do with Nightshade is probably integrate it as an optional feature into web Glaze. It'll be like a checkbox. The idea is not to make everybody poison things. The idea is just to make it there so that if you check it, and we'll do something like, remember your preference, so you don't have to check it every single time. But if you check it and you want it to be remembered as such, then we'll remember it, and then that'll be an option to add in.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sure. So, I mean, yeah. So this is the point that every time I give a keynote or something, I gave a talk at a business forum with a big consulting company last week, and I sat next to somebody at lunch, and I was explaining some of these things, and they're like, "So you're doing a startup, and what's the business model?" I'm like, "No, there's no business model. The whole point is to not make money, and artists are probably not the best customers because they're all under attack. So it's not like they're sitting around with loads of cash willing to throw stuff at me. So I'm like, no." And for this to work, we have to have trust that we're not gonna. So from day one in February or even earlier, I said, we're not gonna sell IP. There's no magic formula. There's no startup. There's no venture. There's nothing. There's not anything. But yeah, I think sometimes it's difficult for people to believe. But we haven't even accepted donations because I don't want to deal with money. But at some point, so I will actually say that the campus level, given how much press and things are going on with Glaze and Nightshade, they've actually approached me and said, we should be able to accept donations. And I was like, from foundations. So we are doing that. We're reaching out to some foundations for the arts and those kind of things. And the idea is to have some nonprofit sort of format set up so that we can sustain engineers and things that long past the time when most of my PhD students on Glaze and other things have graduated. So that's stuff that goes on, and we'll have something for that. But yeah, no money. So.
This is a question directed to Ben, actually. For artists out there who feel like, oh, maybe what's the point of me using Glaze? What's the point of me using Glaze if my art's already out there? Or are people really using Glaze? How many active users of Glaze are out there? What would you tell them?
First, I would say we made it a really big point not to track users, so it's hard to get an accurate count. I use Glaze. So there's been 1.3, 1.4 million downloads, but that's an exaggeration because of course people download things multiple times. So I don't know. So I expect there's probably tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 artists out there, but I don't really know. We do get a lot of emails on a daily basis to the point where I can't answer most of them now. Until last week, we're a month behind on WebGlaze account requests on Twitter. I finally had one of my students help me out because I was literally traveling. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I think now we're only a week behind. She's been great. But then there's Instagram and Threads and the emails. And so we're very behind on accounts. But there's a fair number, I guess.
I think we can forget about Threads.
Well, they don't DM, and I can't ask people to throw out their emails and whatever in public. And so I'm like, so just send me Instagram or Twitter DM. But Blue Sky also doesn't have DMs, and so it's very challenging there too. But yeah, we're just trying to keep up.
And then I'm sure the audience wants to know when Nightshade will be out as well.
Right. Yeah. So all the things that we've been able to do have been on our production GPU servers in control settings. Right. So obviously, one of the big things is I told my students is we have to make Nightshade coexist with Glaze. Because I don't want artists putting out their art that's just for tag purposes, but not be able to protect themselves. So we had to do more tests with integration with those two. And then, yeah, I imagine a few weeks. I think now that we're a little bit better at it, so we're going to be a little bit faster than Glaze, which took a full month. But still, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but it shouldn't. There's nothing that's going to be unforeseeable difficulties, I think, but it's just a matter of time. So a few weeks.
Okay. Also, for the love of Optimus Prime, please glaze your art. I'm trying to chase everybody I can. You know, I'm seeing all these amazing 4K resolution illustrations you guys are putting out there, and that's just like fresh meat for all these tech bros. Please glaze. It's out there. It's free. It's for you. Please use it.
So I can add that I know that Glaze is constantly under attack. I know multiple research groups that are actively attacking Glaze right now. Some of them are more nice about it. Some of them demand source code, and I'm like, no. And other ask nicely for source code, and they're like, but we'll only do this really, really nicely. I'm still like, no. but on the other hand, the paper's out there, and they can do their own thing. They can re-implement it and test it. And so some of them might succeed in some way, shape, or fashion. But we're already designing the next version of Glaze. There's a better way to do this, which I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out. Because I'm not an artist, and it didn't dawn on me for a long time until just recently why it is that when Glaze, sometimes numerically Glaze does the job, but then visually it doesn't. And that's been irking me, and finally I understand. And so now we're going to do Glaze differently. There's going to be a new version of Glaze, probably in another 2-3 months, that will be dramatically different, and it should be much more effective because it's going to take out the original style before it adds on the new style. And I think that's really the key. And I wish I'd done it 6 months ago, but I think it's going to be much more robust and much better looking. But that's going to take a little bit of time to develop.
Remember when they all told us to adapt or die? Now they're like, not like that.
Oh, man. I think this is a good time to start taking some questions. So we actually have a mic over here, if you all don't mind, just so we can hear you all. It's just here in the first row. I know, I'm sorry. So far. Oh, we have a lot. Okay.
We will try to go quick. We are not going to be able to get to everybody.
Yeah.
So if you line up, we'll get to as many as we can.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, and we'll also be hanging out for a little bit afterwards to try to get more questions. So
Yeah.
For starters, this is an incredible service that you're working on. I'm glad that we have some way of artists having peace of mind when sharing their work. How much what is the pricing model for this thing? Like, is it per image? Is it a subscription?
So you missed the part where I said there was no money involved at all, right?
Oh, wait.
Totally free.
Totally free.
I've
That
never
is-
paid a cent to glaze an image.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I mean, there are costs, right? WebGlaze runs on GPU servers in the Amazon cloud, and we pay for it using research credits from research grants that we've gotten for other projects, really, but because we can't use them. And as they run out, we have our own GPU servers that will step in to take the load. And if we run out of that, I mean, there's research grants. So you can thank the National Science Foundation, you can thank DARPA, you can thank other people, but I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, we'll take care of the costs.
And don't forget that he's talking about WebGlaze too. You can also download Glaze local on your own. You can run it without the internet, and that's just, you're not paying for that. You're just paying your electrical bill. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Do you at least take donations?
What's that?
Do you at least take donations or something?
I do. My
John's my
PayPal
business
is-
manager. He'll give me a small cut after he's done with whatever.
Maybe.
I actually, so my campus level people development office really asked me to do this. I have somewhere in my book bag like a little postcard with the contact info of a development office, and if you really want to give them money, again, my response tweet on this is always the same. This is not the best time for artists to be giving away money for anything, right? I mean, I think we're clear on that. So like, just you don't need to. Like, we're not starving for money. I can write more research grants. It's all fine. But if you really, really want to, there's a development office. I'll bring out some of those little cards, and you can have their email address, and you can reach out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will plug really quickly the Concept Art Association, however. They are looking for funding for their next year of advocacy. So, and that's one of the reason I went to the Senate, mostly because of them. So they do great work. So if you really want to, please consider donating to their GoFundMe.
There you go. Do that.
Hi, my name's Alexa Barco. Hello. Sorry, I'm short.
You can take down the mic probably.
Huh?
You can probably take the mic down off of the thing. Or just grab
Whatever's
it, pull it out.
easier.
It's working.
Okay.
Oh,
There you go.
hello. I have a question regarding discussing AI with people who maybe have conflicting opinions with most of us in the room, I'm assuming. Just recently, my school hosted like a little talk with a representative for Adobe AI, and he had this very hopeful outlook that his opinion basically was that, oh, AI is going to make my job a lot easier and I can go home and live my life more. And other people came to him and were like, cool, are you going to address the fact that it's still doing a lot of harm? And he said, well, no, it isn't. How do you have conversations with people who kind of do see AI as this really hopeful thing, but they kind of don't really want to see the damage it's doing, or maybe they're just overlooking it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've got a good answer for it. So first of all, he's not going to enjoy his life more. What is funny about all this is that people are incredibly short-sighted. They don't see what's going to happen in about 6 months. So every single coder, every single artist, designer who says, yeah, this is going to make my job much more easier because it's going to increase my productivity by 5x, I ask them, I say, so what do you think is going to happen? Your manager's going to enjoy and let you have 80% of your free time back to go home and chill? No. Your manager is going to look around at you, at the 5 of you that are sitting in the cubicle, and say, yeah, your 4 other coworkers are unnecessary now because you can do their work. You're going to do exactly what you were doing before, except, you'll get paid the same. And in addition to the 80%, unemployment situation now you've got, all the people losing their jobs, all that's going to happen is that profit is going to go to your manager and his or her manager and all the way up the chain. Right, so I have slides and talks about what kind of dystopian world we're moving towards. But if you've seen Elysium and Battlestar Alita, that's what I see. It's either Iron City or Elysium, for a very small group of people, and everyone else living in trash. So I think that's what's going on, and no normal human employee in most industries is going to enjoy this, because they will, for the short term, they will be like, oh, this makes my job so much easier. Too bad my boss just gave me 5x of work that I used to do. Shocker, that's how capitalism works. They will get fired if they don't do that. And so, yeah, so I think that's the answer. And of course, all the other harms to the other, 4 people out of 5 who no longer have a job. And no, they're not going to start learning about AI and learning how to code so that they can, build more AI. God knows the people who are building AI are also losing their jobs. So just to make that clear.
Thank you. Would it be okay if I could ask one more question? Sorry? Would it be okay if I could ask one more question?
Mia, it's up to you.
Sure, go ahead.
Considering that the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild are also going on strike, and a lot of their negotiations have to do with AI and stuff like that, has there been any intercommunication regarding that? Like other maybe creatives concerned about AI meeting with other creatives concerned about AI in different ways?
There's actually a panel about that tomorrow on Sunday. I forgot what time it is, but you can look at my Instagram on. There you go. Awesome. Yes. So, thank you. So basically, tomorrow there will be. They're not representing their unions, but they are individuals who are part of unions, so the Screen Actors Guild, the Animation Guild, and the Writers Guild, and they will be discussing how they will be going forth with contract clauses that make sure that every union isn't somehow overstepping the other union, and that we can all go forward together with clauses that serve all of us together.
To add to that really quick, Stephen and myself, we were a part of an FTC listening session panel concerning generative AI and the creative economy. And that panelist list was wild. There was almost every representative of every major creative industry. We spoke about the harms we were experiencing already with generative AI, what our each individual, community and creative community is thinking, what they're feeling. So if you want to get a great, view of like all of them, like that's another great resource outside of going to John's panel tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. One of the quotes from earlier in this talk that I really latched onto was, there's good AI, it's generative AI, that's the problem. I was curious if there was any application of Gen AI beyond art creation that could be considered good, or is it just so fundamentally flawed that it's all bad?
I have trouble, and I've thought about a lot of this for a long time. I think the only legit generative AI app beyond, things like drawing pretty pictures to, for icons and whatnot, is something like bringing your lost ones back from the dead. And there are startups that try to do that, and that is the only legitimate justification I've heard for things like synthetic voice generation and mimicry. And whether some people find it creepy and, and maybe, there's a place for AI girlfriends or boyfriends, and, I'm not judging, but those are the kind of apps that I see that would be maybe okay, but I like everything else has all sorts of bad things to it, like replacing human models with, AI models. Oh God, no. Yeah. That's all I got.
If I could just jump in on that real quick. I also already see that it can be good and useful for art. I mean, this current system that we're talking about, these big commercial models, they're these lowest common denominator, make everything look the same monstrosities, right? But procedural and generative art have actually been around for a very long time. People have been making that kind of work since the 70s, 80s. And so if you look up the artist Anna Riddler, for example, she does generative AI art, and she makes her own data sets from scratch. She goes out and photographs everything herself, tags everything herself. She has to work really hard to make a data set that has even thousands of images, just 2,000 or 3,000. She has to work really, really hard, and she gets incredible, interesting art out of it. It doesn't look like Midjourney. It doesn't look like this super refined, like, oh, that looks like a commercial piece of art, but she brings other things to it that make it interesting and compelling and uses it to make commentary. So this particular modality of it is what is so galling. I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with procedural or generative art in that way. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hi. I first just want to say thank you, because it has been so emotional, right, in the last year, I'm sure, for everyone here. And I was so angry too, but it's just like sitting in a puddle of anger, and I'm glad that there are people who are actually acting on it. So I'm very grateful for all of you. My question is about Nightshade. And so first, my understanding is it's not retroactive. It affects the new data sets, right? So I guess my question is, do you think it's enough so if it affects the future data sets, and we already have so many industry artists, like senior artists who are like gung-ho for AI, and we have the current data sets, is it enough to prevent jobs from being taken in, entry-level concept artist jobs that are already being threatened? Is it enough? Do we need to do more?
Well, clearly we need to do more, that's for sure. What I will say is that Nightshade is not meant to destroy the companies, for example, but it is meant to pause or slow a future development of models, right? So it's going to make it more challenging, more time-consuming, more expensive, more difficult for these companies to go out and scrape images because they're going to be deathly afraid of getting poison into their models, and you can't get it out once it's in. So I have talked to colleagues in CS who think it's inevitable that everyone's going to start poisoning each other and perhaps mass induce some sort of mutual destruction. You know, who knows? So, but you know, that may have a sort of downstream economic effect. But I will say that most companies I know in this space would implode if you were to tell them that they could no longer build future models. Right. So even though the damage is there with existing models, companies and VCs and shareholders cannot say, yeah, you can just stop now and we'll just live off of that revenue. That's not how that works. If they did that, they would immediately plummet in share value. And so.
I will also add oh yeah, no, that's awesome. I will also add rather quickly as well that the current models as we see them, those aren't guaranteed either, because we have upcoming FTC decisions, we have upcoming court cases. The FTC in the past itself has employed something called algorithmic disgorgement, which is metal and I love it, which basically means when, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically means if a model is found to have ill-gotten data and it relies upon that to function, then a company must destroy that model and all algorithms to have that. And yeah, no, that's pretty rad. So that's not a guarantee either. So we don't know what the FTC is going to do. Court cases in the future might say, hey, this does copyright infringe. This is bad. You cannot use it commercially as a company. So none of that is guaranteed.
But that's why the time to fight is now.
Yes.
So Glaze your work. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm sorry we couldn't take every question, but please feel free to